CampHacker, bringing your world into focus.
Hello, Camp Pros, and welcome to the CampHacker podcast. My name is Travis Allison. I run a blog about running a great summer camp at camphacker.tv.
Hi, my name is Dan Weir. I'm the Director of Camping Services at Frost Valley YMCA. Frost Valley is a year-round camp conference education facility up in the Catskill Mountains. And this was summer number 18 for me working at Frost Valley this past summer.
And my name's Gabrielle Rail, and I'm one of the camp directors at Camp Warrow. And it's good calculations, Dan, on how many years you've been working. I think it's over 15 years that I've been working at Warrow, which is an all-girls camp in the Laurentians in Quebec.
And my name's Joe Richards. I'm the Executive Director of Pierce Williams Christian Centre, which is United Church of Canada's summer camp and retreat facility located in Fingal, Ontario, sort of halfway between Detroit and Toronto. And I just finished my 20th summer directing summer camps.
And I'm Paul Sheridan. I run Four Winds Westward Ho, which is an independent, not-for-profit residential camp in the San Juan Islands in Washington State. This is my 10th summer at Four Winds that we just completed, and my 14th summer, I believe, overall at summer camps.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have everybody here. Paul, it's great to have you back again.
Thanks. It's good to be here.
Yes, we love having you as a co-host. Today, we were doing a bit of discussion at the end of the summer about what we would start off with this year. And with Gab's new show, Camp Code, I'm trying to steer us a bit away from staff training stuff and let Gab and Ruby and Beth talk about staff training stuff. It wouldn't be sort of where we'd get to at this point in the year, but I've been just trying to get a bit of separation and thinking about what big picture stuff we can do on the show. And Joe dropped some great thought bombs on us with 5 ideas of really cool topics. And we're going to go with his number 4. It was the one that struck our fancy today because honestly, it's just such a mind-opening topic that just makes you think about what you would do. So Joe's, we're calling the show Starting from Scratch. And Joe's idea that he wrote down was what would we do if we could design a camp or a camp experience from the ground up? Totally start with nothing. What would you do? And Joe, I wanted to ask you to start us off, what made you think about this and consider this as a good topic?
Years ago, when
No. And then we lost Joe. He's moving. Joe, we can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to start the intro again, and I'm going to throw to somebody else who wants to go first.
I could go first. We've started several camp programs while being here, so I can talk about how it's how simple things have kind of expanded outward.
Yeah.
And talk about horseback riding lessons expanding to an ARC girls equestrian camp. So.
Right on.
Love it.
Okay, so note to self, at 3:20.
Am I back?
You're back. We'll let you go after, once we trust your internet again, we'll let you go after Dan, Joe. And Scotty gives us a little bark on that.
Yeah. Something is outside attacking Scotty from outside, apparently. So
Oh, yeah. Right on.
whatever.
So I'll start it off and I'll go straight to Dan and then we'll give you second pick, Joe.
Okay. I'm good.
So today we wanted to talk about a really big topic, and it was an idea of Joe's, and it's a good thing, I think, for us to expand our thinking about where summer camp is going. And we're going to call this show Starting from Scratch. And Joe's idea was, what would we do if we could design a camp or a camp experience from the very beginning? And Dan, I know that that's something that's been a big part of what you've had to do at Frost Valley, or got to do at Frost Valley.
Yeah, we're pretty unique in the sense that we have 8 overnight camping programs and we have 2 day camp programs. And it basically all started from an overnight camping program for boys, and that blossomed into trying to serve every demographic. In most recent history, one that's kind of come naturally for us is we've been doing horseback riding lessons for years. And then we started branching out from horseback riding lessons to a little program called Ranch Leaders, which was only 10 kids, and they were spending another 2 hours doing horseback riding lessons, and then doing camp and still living in their camp cabins. And then that program expanded eventually to its own village, and it was known as Mustang Village. And then that program actually expanded into a completely separate property and its own dining hall and its own ranch, and is known as East Valley Ranch, and is literally all day with horses in an equestrian camp. So we've done this a few times in terms of kind of growing our camp, but that was the most recent terms of success. And we're actually looking at right now, we have a partnership with the Bear Grylls Survival Academy, and we're going to be starting a Bear Grylls survival camp this upcoming summer, where kids will come up and learn survival skills from the Bear Grylls staff for 1 week. And will literally be, the first few days will be education, and then the last few days will be surviving in the wild. So it's something that we've done a few times, but it takes a lot of effort and a lot of intention at the beginning of it as well.
Right. And Joe, what was it that that made you think of this idea and say, what do we look at if we start from complete nothing?
What made me think of the idea was this concept that I have for years. When I got here, I'd thought about doing my master's, and in talking with a university professor who used to be my CIT coordinator back in the 80s, he said, essentially, why do you want to do a master's? I said, well, to do research. And he said, well, listen, what you have here at Pierce Williams is it's like little microcosm where you can do whatever research you want, and nobody's going to stop you, and you don't have to go through all the loopholes and the jumping, and it's just something that we encourage our staff to rethink everything at camp. Because if you don't rethink it, you're slowly going to die. And as we've done this, it's this idea that you're like, okay, well, what would camp look like if we started today? What's going to get kids interested? What's going to get kids coming? And what's going to introduce new kids to camp? And so it's this idea that when you approach something with no limitations, right? That's the other thing. By starting from scratch, you're not putting any of the limitations of your organization onto that program. You're just saying, listen, if we could make this come to life, what would it look like? Then you deal with the logistics after that. Whether it comes to fruition or not is a wholly other point and discussion. But the idea of big picture thinking, dream no small dream, all of those things is what made me think of it originally, Travis.
Right. And so when you go through those exercises, Joe, how do you get them to get beyond but we've always done it this way?
I think one of the things is you give them perspective. Summer staff especially have a very short perspective, right? They're there for 1, 2, 3 summers, 4 summers, and they're like, well, we've always done it this way. And you're like, no, we started that like 3 summers ago. Like by being consistently there, so be it a family-owned camp or be it a camp where you have someone who's consistently there, you can say, no, we haven't always done it this way. This is a way we used to do it. So when people ask for change, sometimes they're like, well, this doesn't work. Let's try this. And you can come back and say, well, we have tried that. Or you can say, listen, maybe it didn't work at the time because of certain circumstances. We can try that again. The perspective and making sure that people understand that it's just because we've always done it doesn't mean that we have to always do it. The quote I remember from growing up was, just because it keeps on working, that doesn't make it right. So change isn't a bad thing. And here, right now, we went through a lot of change this summer. We have 2 new buildings on site with Humes Hall and our new barn. And I think it's really put that idea into people's head that we can do whatever we want. And we can create things in what we want. So for us, we have actual physical manifestation of the idea that you don't have to always do it the way you did, because that doesn't exist anymore. Right. When you tear down a 130-year-old barn, you're basically saying, let's start over and figure out how arts and crafts works in our new barn.
Yeah. And Paul, if you had an opportunity to start something brand new, or to even start your own camp brand new, what would be your process?
Well, it's an interesting question for me because it's essentially the opposite of my actual life. At Four Winds, we're approaching 90 years old. We're we've specifically said we don't want to start new programs. We just want to do what we do. And our program would be awfully hard. Our program is not what I would do if I were starting a camp from scratch, because it just wouldn't work. I'd be attempting to sell 4-week camp to West Coast parents, which as a brand new camp would be impossible. The money side of it would be really, really challenging. So it's an interesting question. I think what I would do, well, one thing I would look at what Scott Brody has done at Camp Everwood. He has a very old a boys and a girls residential camp, Kenwood and Evergreen, and he wanted to start a day camp, which he called Everwood after his 2 residential camps. And he started it from scratch in Boston, which is, as I understand it, a pretty crowded day camp market. And what he did is he tied every single activity to a 21st century skill.
Right.
When he went to design the kids' sort of daily experience, every single one of those things was intentionally tied to a 21st century skill. And I think that is really sort of capturing the uniqueness of what camp can offer, combined with what we know now about what kids need and what society in general isn't giving kids.
Right.
And he's done very, very well with that. The other thing I would say, and I know that this is not why any of us got into the camp business, but I would be very, very intentional about making sure the money side of things works. I think camp people can be. We got into this business for kids and
Yep.
for these magical moments and magical feelings, which are real and valid, and I love them too. But we have to be careful, I think, to create things that are sustainable financially, that are going to continue, long into the future, because the budget works. And I think that so I would attempt on the money side of things, if it were myself, certainly, to keep my overhead awfully low,
Right.
To find ways that we could stay nimble and on the financial side of things. I think that's a trap that we can fall into for sure.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. All 4 of you have long established camps, and so one of the expenses that you don't have is mortgage, paying for buildings, etc. Obviously, there are projects like Joe's taking on to have good stewardship of that stuff, but it's one thing that the camp has a bit of flexibility. An established camp has some more flexibility to try these things. I'm hoping what we get out of today is inspire some people to try these things, is to throw stuff out and try new stuff altogether.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the land side of it, I feel if you look at camps that have started fresh and have been successful, in a lot of cases they have not bought land.
Yep.
They're doing it on public land, or they're doing it in rented facilities, or they have not gone and in the first year or two gotten a big mortgage. And I think that is certainly a key thing.
Interesting. That's really neat. And Maurice is a bigger concept of camp directors learning how to treat summer camp as a business first, of making sure that the money works first, so that the money can pay for the ideals that we're trying to get across, this transformative experience that we're trying to create.
Yeah, if I could just add one more thing to that,
Yeah.
I think when the money works, you can stick to your principles.
Right.
Because oftentimes we are pushing families outside their comfort zones. So we're going to do things that are going to make some families nervous. When you're really struggling to make your next payroll, it can be very tempting to bend on those principles. But when the budget's fine, when that all the checks are going to clear,
Right.
It's a lot easier to stick to those principles. And I think that's important.
Yep. So, Gab, what would be your philosophy of answering this question of what if we could start all over again?
I think when Jeff Bradshaw was starting Winona, we had a really interesting conversation, because my family was in a similar situation. He purchased his camp, but we purchased it, we inherited a culture, basically.
Right.
And he was talking about how he was setting up the culture of Winona and what he wanted to come, get out of it, and what he wanted the experience to be for the staff, the experience to be for the campers. And I think it was for the first time I had started thinking about, as we talk about a lot, big picture things. And I started to think about what are some of the things in my camp culture that are no longer relevant, that no longer make sense with the values that we're trying to portray. So what are some of the traditions? What are some of the actions? How do we train our staff? And I think that the exercise of thinking of, if you started your camp from scratch, is an amazing exercise in the sense that it gives you sort of an opportunity, sort of like a dream world, to look at what's possible and see if there's some of those things that apply to your organization. And I think that what Paul was saying about the finances, the thing to just be careful about is not to follow necessary trends. So this is what people are into right now. Let's do this. It's more about, is there a base, a value base that links to that program. So for me, if I was to start something new, Woro's is unplugged throughout the summer for the campers. But I would love to do some sort of video storytelling, because I think storytelling is a beautiful art form and definitely happens at camp around a campfire, but let's get that out there. And so there's certain programs I think that would be really cool that you could, but if it comes from a value-based, stems from a value base, it would be really, really important. And I just started to be on a board with a camp that's going to run for the first time in 2015, just for 2 weeks, and it's for a camp with young adults that have cancer, so from 15 to 20. And that's the process we're in right now. Right now, we're deciding, how do we train staff? What's the mood? What are the goals? And so just being part of that and having a large group of people that are doctors, camp directors, accountants, sort of in one room discussing what camp should look like, has been a very interesting process. But now I'm part of that sort of the beginning starts of dreaming up a summer camp, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, right on.
I wonder if you approached it from the perspective that if you had no idea what summer camp was.
Right. Every time Joe's about to drop a truth bomb on us, it drops off.
And thoughts and ideas, but if you were to start
Joe, hold on
from
a sec.
zero,
Joe,
Yeah.
we lost you. I think you said something probably really smart there, but we didn't hear it. You start your thought again?
oh, I need to get my oh. What I'm saying is that if you were to start from zero and you were and you didn't have the same knowledge that we all have as camp people, what kind of programs would you run? What kind of programs would you do? Because a lot of times people are going to be stuck on, well, we have to offer canoeing, we have to be on a lake, we have to do this, we have to do that. And what I'm saying is, if you started fresh with none of those constraints, what would camp look like today that would most benefit the kids? Right? It's
Right.
It's an interesting perspective, and it's funny because I think about things that we don't offer at camp, things like video editing or storytelling in that sense. Coding was another thing. I just brought back a book from a trip to Michigan. Teach coding to kids. Help your kids to code. And it's not taught in our curriculums here in Ontario. I'm not sure many schools it is. But I gave this book to my daughter, Kayla, who's 9 years old, and she latched on to Scratch, which is a coding program that MIT developed. And she sits in her room and makes things dance around the screen. And she's like, this is awesome. And she's like, I'm going to log on at school and show all my friends. And it's one of those things where you're like, that's an interesting program and how you share things with kids. But it's, what type of programs do we consider camp, and what type of programs do we consider valuable to kids in this age? So as Gab said, you want to stay away from trends. What's trending now? You want to, it's like university. The whole concept is that, as said in the Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The problem with university is it's gotten away from its true value, which is teaching people how to learn.
Right.
That's what we need to do. We don't need to teach them specific things. We need to teach them how to learn so they can continue to adapt as we go forward.
Right.
And I think that's why it's difficult to label what camp is. I think it comes down to the value systems of the camp director is really when it comes down to it. But for me, it is about life skills, and it is about learning about yourself, and it's about giving you experiences that are going to help you when you're an adult. So obviously the skill of canoeing might not be able to help you in a boardroom, but the fact that you persevered and you really honed in on that skill, you learn certain aspects. And just like coding, if it's in an environment where it's supportive, where you're challenged, and but it's maybe something that you wouldn't have the opportunity to do in another place, that's what camp that's maybe the difference between just a regular program where you're learning how to code versus a camp that's going to be doing really cool computer stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I think if you really wanted to strip it down, it's novel environment, it's pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, and it's community and relationships and friendships. Like those are sort of you could do those things in lots of different ways, but I think that those are sort of the things that if you got away from those, it would feel like, to me, you might not be doing camp anymore. But you could do those three things in lots and lots of different ways. And there's no reason that it has to be on a lake or that it has to involve canoeing. That's for sure. Although I love canoeing.
Mm-hmm. Dan, you've got an idea. Let's see what we're going to say.
Yeah. So I've had this discussion a lot, actually, when we talk about new camp programs. My camp loves expanding in the sense of the true passion of trying to serve as many children as possible. That my CEO sincerely believes that it's our mission to serve as many kids as possible, and if we could run another camp program safely and of quality, that we should be doing it. So we're always looking at serving more in this way. So I just jotted down. There's been 9 kind of discussion points that, and some of them have already been mentioned. But when we start talking about this, that we have these discussions to make sure that we are 100% on all these before we move forward. So the first is demographic. Does this match up with the community you're currently serving, or for instance, I serve a lot of the New York City and New Jersey crowd. Is this going to match up with the demographic we serve? The second is the audience, for the camp, which is a little bit different than the demographic. Is there an audience for this style of camp? When we were starting to talk about Bear Grylls, is there an audience of kids that would love to learn survival skills? And do we believe we can capture that audience, for lack of better words? The third is mission. If you're a nonprofit, you have to have a mission, theoretically. But if you're a private camp, hopefully you either have a mission or a focus or a benefit statement or something. Is this camp program you're starting match up with that mission? And if you're starting from complete scratch, you should make your mission reflect that. And parents really do want to know what the mission of your place is. When we do open houses, the second slide is our mission, and we explain how it transcends all the way down to the camp program. It really shows the quality of programming. The fourth is the goals of the program. So what are the outcomes or the experiences that you want kids to have, and make sure it's designed. Everything's designed to have it that way. The fifth one's staff. You kind of have to have a charismatic leader to really to launch the program, and it's not the same person necessarily as the person that could run a high quality program. There are definitely personality types that are perfect in that entrepreneurship of starting off something, and are not the same people you want running the program. And it's for us our 115th year. And you also need the right counseling staff. Do you have quality staff members that are going to be around for a few summers to kind of see it through and get that commitment? Then the next one I've written down is traditions. What does it mean? Really making sure that the traditions match up that you're creating. I think that's the most fun part when we're starting a new camp is we really get to be intentional about the traditions. There's one camp I know that they literally sweep up the ashes of their campfire and they put it in a cigar box. And all these years later, it's not the greatest to be reinforcing smoking into your camp population. And so when you're creating traditions now, you could really be intention filled of where things go and what their meaning is. 7, Paul was talking about financials. Sustainability is huge. I watch a number of nonprofits that just bank on the fact that a donor is going to come through. I watch a number of private camps that don't really look at they want to do year-round programming, but don't really recognize how much it would cost to heat the dining hall. All those things are really important to understand. Number 8, I have written down as the site, just pure logistics. You have to check with your local Department of Health. You have to make sure you have enough toilets, the kids are going to shower, that your food's going to be prepped properly, and can you pull it off in the timeline you're setting things up. And the last is, I think this is what Gab was talking about, is that purple cow element, going to Gary Forrester. Can you knock it out of the park? Are you going to be able to run a program that is quality and that is worthwhile? These are the points that we always come up with in the discussion. And if we have yeses to everything, it's go forward. And if we don't have yeses on all of it, that's where we really have to hammer things out before we move forward. And I've noticed because we come up with a ton of ideas, literally sit in a room and just see what sticks, and go and talk to families and camp staff, and it's really interesting, some of the things and how open people are to expanding a camp program or just starting another camp program. But at the same point in time, you need to have enthusiasm and buy in with yourself, and really recognize that you're into this project and that you want to pull it off. I think when we're talking about these, we're talking about motivated individuals that wanted to do something. Scott wanted to grow a day camp. Like that. All those things really make a difference. But right. So that's my list.
Right on. So 2 big thoughts that have come up. One is one is a program that I've seen have a very radical shift in the last 5 years. And Outward Bound Canada used to have a whole bunch of properties. They had 3 properties across the country, and all these outdoor programs and typical stuff that you expect from Outward Bound. And they eventually ended up selling off their properties and moving into the city. And so they now run a downtown Toronto outdoor experience because they were willing to radically look at what they were doing and see how they could impact the most number of people. And I think that that we as camps need to be open to complete shift in what we're talking about and the way that we run things. And it's one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is if we really want to be able to reach more people. This comes out of my big question for 2014 for summer camps. I'm sure I mentioned this in the last podcast because it's been a bee in my bonnet all summer, is asking families. I think every camp should be asking their families of this child's parents, how many of them had an overnight summer camp experience. And I think that we would find that the majority of those kids have a parent who had an overnight camp experience, because those people get us. Because I don't think we're very good at explaining this value. Paul was talking about that too, explaining the value of what we do to people who don't understand summer camp. And one of the things we may have to give up on in order to have more impact, more transformative experiences on more kids is give up on the fact of owning a site that's in the woods, beautiful lake, sunsets and mountains and trees and all those things that people talk about because they have a natural and deserved love of their property. But if you want to get radical, then I think we need to talk about bringing camp to them instead of always relying on them coming to camp.
I was just talking with somebody.
Dan, you go first. I got a feeling you need to get going soon.
Yeah, I do. I was talking with somebody yesterday at the Tri-State, or 2 days ago at the Tri-State Planning Committee meeting for the camp conference, and she basically, I can't remember the name of her company off the top of my head. I apologize. She runs day camp programs out of country clubs, and how she's seen great growth over the past bit. But she, basically has 3 to 4 staff at these country clubs that she interviews and she hires and she trains, and does it across the country. And they serve 20 kids at a country club, and they run camp there. And I've run camp at YMCA facilities where it's a gym and swim, and they don't have a lot of grass. They don't have the same scenery, and camp definitely has to be able to adjust and really make sure that people really understand that it's more than just their property. The property certainly plays a huge focus in it, but it's a really great point that you brought up. That we really have to be adjusting to the market, for lack of better words.
Right. Joe, what were we going to say?
I just agree wholeheartedly. I often think to myself, are we doing enough? And this is where the idea of after touring around Australia last year and having a summer to think through all of the things I saw and all of the things we do, are we doing enough to reach other kids? People say camp is successful, and we had a great summer at Pierce Williams, but are we reaching kids that we want, that are new to us? Are we reaching kids that want to have that camp experience? And a couple of weeks ago, I was in New York City for a fundraising workshop, and I was sitting at the table, and here's the thought I had as I was sitting at the table. So there's 22 people sitting around this table, and they're introducing themselves, and this is a training for fundraising for a book, The Generosity Network, which I put as a cool tool a while ago. And at the table, they're introducing themselves, and I'm Joe Richards. I'm from Pierce Williams Christian Center, and I'm looking around the table thinking I've got to be the only camp person here, because I'm the only person who walked into 15 Central Park West with Birkenstock shorts and a short sleeve shirt on. And then you start to see the other people around the table, and it's like the X Prize Foundation is there for training, and the MIT Media Lab is there for training, and Elwyn out of Philadelphia, which is a huge organization that does programs for kids with disabilities, and the Berklee College of Music was there for training. And here's a thought I had, and this applies to us now. I thought, I'm either in the really wrong place or I'm in the really right place, right? Like, we need to do more to reach out. We need to do more. And if that's camps at country clubs, or, if it's something dramatically different, attaching ourselves. If I were to start from scratch, I agree with Paul. Finances have to be in order. Mm-hmm. And years ago, I tried to buy my own site, and thank God I didn't get the money to buy my own site, because I'd be paying off that mortgage for the rest of my life. But if I ran a program with no site and just rented, then it's all just numbers, and you can focus back on what you're doing, which is affecting the lives of children. And whether you do that downtown Toronto or whether you do that in the Catskill Mountains of New York, you're going towards the same objectives. And I think that as we move forward, if people always talk about year-round schooling being the end of summer camp, and I'm like, no, it's just a chance to change. And the reality is that a lot of our camps are struggling, mm-hmm. and I say that as an industry, and so what can we do to be different and to be better is the objective. And I think that there's too many closed minds on board of directors of nonprofit camps. Not mine. I like my board of directors, but just people who are struggling with how to run a great camp program, and dealing with the legal liability when they don't run a great camp program.
Right. Dan, I want to give you one last chance in case you get called away. Is there anything you want to add? Make sure it gets out there before you have to leave.
I think the biggest thing is to not be naive in the process, and to really be realistic about how it's going to be a slow growth at first. With doing this, it usually takes about 3 years for it to really take off, and you really need a huge form of commitment in any program you're running, and to not give up easily. To really, I think of camp change that we make internally. It usually takes 3 years, right? The first year, it's, oh, this is new. We haven't done this before. The second year is, oh, we did this last year, and yeah, I remember. I liked it. Like we should make this tweak. And then in the third year, it's we've always done this, right? This is just what we do, and that goes for staff, that goes for families. And I think if you embark on this adventure, that you just need to really have the commitment and the time to put it in for a few years and really see it through.
And the patience.
Yes.
Right. Yes. So it involves a fair amount of financial commitment as well as just the patience to keep trying new stuff.
Yeah, or maybe recognizing you're not going to make a profit until year 3. That could be really, really difficult for some people. And camp as a whole is a very profitable, sustainable thing. If you really are able to minimize your expenses with the year round, it really can go long. So,
yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, I think I do have to run. I'm seeing.
We can hear your phone buzzing for you.
Yeah, my phone's buzzing too.
Yeah.
Can I talk about my pick of the week before I go? My tool of the week?
Yes, of course. Please do, and then we'll wrap it up after you're done.
Yeah, just 2 seconds. It's Mom and Dad are fighting Slate magazine's podcast, and I think the biggest thing I've noticed as becoming a parent is that my constant discussion with about my child, and I think for a lot of camp directors or a lot of camp professionals that don't have kids, that's something that you miss out on during the 9 months of the year, and so it's really just intriguing hearing two parents talk and have a guest. For 45 minutes on a topic about kids, and it just gives you something to think about when you're talking to families over the year. But I just found it very intriguing, and it was something I recognized with my shift of becoming a parent over the past 2 years. So,
right.
And being a camp professional. But yeah, that's it. Thank you to everybody, and I'll talk to you later. I got to run. I apologize. So.
Thanks, Dan. Take care.
Yeah.
So, shoot, I had such a good thought too. Well, does anybody have anything you want to jump off of what Dan was saying?
I think for me, if to be honest, if I was to start a camp from fresh, I would basically take the word camp out of it altogether, and just think about what's the venture I want to do, and often, and I really mean this in a very kind way, but it's popped into my head a couple of times thinking that our name Camp Waro is getting in the way of what we're actually trying to do, because we have to convince the clients that don't understand what we actually do, because they have a notion already, which isn't a positive notion of what summer camp is. I mean, something they can't connect to.
Yep.
And I would probably rebrand and rename our program and make it very clear, which is basically something along, Girls Matter, or leadership and girls, or something that's very, very tangible. And that's not to say at all that I feel like we should all drop the word camp. It's very near and dear to my heart. But I think that there's a whole branding issue, and I know that the ACA has put a lot of effort into trying to rebrand, and so has certain provincial associations across Canada. But the word camp is something that it brings a lot of great clients that already understand it, but I think what you were talking about are the clients that we're trying to get, and that's just something that I'm very curious about. How do we get those clients? I'm really interested in seeking out those clients, and but I wonder what the word camp means to them, and as you said, Travis, I think that survey question about what parents went to camp is really, really valuable, because my guess is that for the most part, at least one of the parents has gone to summer camp, and that pile is really dwindling. but if I was to start a camp, I'd really probably drop that name and just develop a program first and foremost, and then, look at the finances and see what camp could bring to me.
Yes. Smart.
I say that with blushing cheeks and
interpretation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love it, Cap. I love how radical that is. Makes me so happy. Just to think that big. It's awesome.
Well, I think that's what you have to do in business, and business is not a nasty word, and especially for not-for-profits. Not-for-profits are businesses. They have to succeed financially, either in fundraising, and so do for-profits. And a lot of the time, I feel that not-for-profits and for-profits have very similar financial issues, and
Right.
you have to think like a business, regardless of where your money's coming from.
Well, and Gab, that idea of taking summer camp out for an organization like ours at Pierce Williams, that's a simple thing because it's not in our name, right? We're Pierce Williams Christian Center. We say we're a summer camp and retreat facility, but it would be simple enough for me to rename the summer program like we're a citizen builder. We're a people developer. We're a skill, right? Like whatever phrase we come up with, and I'm sure if I spend any time at all, I could come up with much better phrases than those. But it is a radical idea, but to say what we do, because we all know what summer camp does, but I'm not sure, as Travis, I'm not sure those parents who don't have the camp experience know.
Exactly. And this idea came to me when my partner wanted me to go see a clowning show. And I was like, hell no, I'm not doing that. Sounds like, I love you, but it does not sound like fun. And he was like, oh, it's going to be great. And I grew up in Montreal, like great, Cirque du Soleil, like this is, clowning's a bit, but I was like, ugh, I just sit down and watch clowns for an hour and a half. No, thank you. And I went because I'm lovely. And, and it was amazing. It really was. It was a fantastic evening. It was almost like cabaret-ish, but it was definitely clowning. And I was like, wow, clowns need to rebrand themselves because I think people that are in clowning,
that's a perfect,
love it.
Right.
And if you're not, like some people that I know, including myself and a handful of my friends that are snobs, snob clown people, they wouldn't have gone.
But I think we also misunderstand what things are. So exactly. Clowning's a perfect example. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a show called Slava's Snow Show. And Slava's Snow Show ran in the mid-90s to the early 2000s.
One clowning show in my life. That's it. No, I don't know Slava clown show.
Well, but this is the thing. Slava's Snow Show, and Slava's like this famous clown in Russia. But clowning in Russia is not like the circus clowning here. It's literally a drama show of a single guy on stage, and I liked it so much I went 3 different times at 3 different theaters because he made it snow on you in a theater. It was and it was one of those things where if you told people that's what clowning was, I'm not sure what you would think what somebody at a birthday party or a circus does. Because the two are so totally different. It's like saying Cirque du Soleil is clowning. It's not. It's a performance. It's something else. And so that's the trick is to say what we all do is the same is a very, very, we're painting with a broad brush.
Yeah.
But I love the idea of just not being overly attached to our history.
That's right.
To accomplish our future, right?
I 100% agree. And again, I just want to say that it's really from the values that, Paul, as you said, you love canoeing. I love canoeing. It's taught me amazing life skills. And, I'm also super badass when I get in a canoe and somebody's like, whoa, look at her. And I'm like, yeah, that's helpful. It's great. Helps my self-esteem. But I think that's the type of stuff. It's like, what is it from canoeing that, created this feeling in certain individuals? And, and Joe, you had said, when you started at Pierce Williams, I remember you saying, ha, I don't have a lake, but I'm the type of guy because of my past camp experience that I don't need a lake. But there's a lot of people, to be a camp director, a residential camp director, they need a lake. They don't know what else to do.
Right.
And I think that was also the start of me thinking, you have to think beyond what you know, basically.
Right. Paul.
Well, and I think I think that, well, just to throw something out there, I think that stepping back from what I would do personally if I was trying to create a brand new summer camp and going more towards what should the industry do, or what do we hope this movement looks like in 20 or 30 years, if the way forward, or the way to big growth, is programs in cities, programs that are more a la carte, programs that do activities that we're not as familiar with, programs that aren't in traditional, what we think of as summer camp settings with a lake and canoes, then what we need is a cadre of camp professionals that is very strong in quality and much bigger in quantity. Because the thing about the lake and the canoes and the cabins and the university age staff is that it is a formula that gets you maybe 80% of the way there.
Right.
With just that basic setting, and that's why so many camps do it. I mean, it's a formula that does work, and if you're going, I think that more creative programs, different types of programs to achieve the same type of magic and growth that we see in kids, we're going to need a really amazing cadre of camp professionals that can create those programs and pull that off. And so I think things like this and things like the Camp Pros group and sort of cultivating those younger leaders is going to be key to making programs like this go and achieve the same types of goals that we can achieve in a more traditional setting.
This discussion is so exciting for me. Here today, this very moment, all of you listening, the five of us having this awesome open discussion about the future of summer camp. This is why CampHacker was started, for this day. It is a much bigger discussion than we have time to. So the five of us are here committing that we're going to come back to this, because I have lots of other thoughts, but I want to keep this pretty manageable in terms of listening, one or two time periods to listen to this show, because it's great. So we're going to come back to radical thinking about the future of summer camp. There's some awesome ideas there. I do want to give each of you a chance to see if there's anything else.
Make a good series.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So a good thing for us to come back to regularly. Joe, do you have any other wrap-up thoughts on this topic for today?
I could talk for hours about this. This is an idea like this is something that at like a think camp, this is the conversation that normally goes on around the tables at a conference like that.
Right on. Good. Well, thanks for presenting the idea, Joe. Gab, do you have any other wrap-up thoughts on this?
No, it's great to be part of this type of conversation, and I think that it's sometimes scary to push the envelope in the sense that what we've been doing for years is working well. I think the only thing is that you need to ask, can you do it better, and what direction does that need to take you? And it's not a disrespect to your history at all.
Right.
You're building on that foundation.
Right. And the thing I would add to that, Gab, is that what we've been doing for years, although has been successful for a long time and is sustainable for many people, it's not growing. The industry is not growing and doing it the same old way. Where the industry is growing, and I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, but I'm just thinking about this big picture, that the industry is growing in different areas, or needs to grow in different areas to survive. Exactly.
I couldn't agree more. That's all it is. It's basically there are numbers out there. Camps are having a hard time.
Yeah.
You have to keep evaluating and evolving, and it doesn't have to be in one. Like now, everybody has pink hair because it's really awesome,
right?
And it's going to look great on Twitter. You don't have to go crazy, but you do have to evaluate.
Nice.
But though, pink hair on Twitter would be that is actually cool.
Any final thoughts, Paul?
It's exciting and it's scary, I think, for those of us that are tied to traditional places.
Right.
But it is exciting, and I think that the idea of us touching more and more kids' lives and having that positive effect, we need to do what we need to do to make that happen. You get it, reaching 15-20% of kids in North America is not enough, and it's not, and nothing that's happening right now in a large scale is going to get us there. And so this radical thinking, I think, is important to get us to that bigger place.
Yeah. Right on. Well, thank you all for a great conversation. I look forward to continuing it on in many times going forward. I think it's going to be awesome. So that brings us to our tool of the week. So we've had some great conversation, and we're going to give you that to take home, some things for you to ruminate on, and please do respond and reach out to us on Twitter. You'll find us all in the show notes at camphacker.tv/podcast, where you can find out how to get in touch with each one of us, or leave us a comment there. I think we're getting a lot more web comments these days. It's pretty great. But let's move on to the tool, and with a promise that we will come back to this. So I'm going to start with mine. There was a discussion today on Camp Pros about where to find good music for your camp videos. I've actually seen some awesome camp videos this week that I've been really impressed with, and they had both the two ones that I'm thinking of had a radically different take on the music of it. And I think using pop songs is although not is first of all not legal to use a pop song without paying for it, but also can lead to lots of troubles because of having your videos taken down and stuff, etc. There are lots of awesome sources of good music that would be catchy, rememberable, all those things that you get from a pop song that you could get for some for free, some for $50 or $60 to use. Some would be more than that, and you could also have stuff custom written. So I'm going to post a link in the show note of a list of songs that I'm keeping, of places that you can get music for your camp videos, and I'll keep updating that so that people can see that. So if you go to camphacker.tv/podcast, look for our tool of the week on episode 73, you'll see my list that I keep there. Paul, what's your pick?
My tool of the week is Camp Moves Me, which is a campaign that the American Camp Association is doing in October. It's one of these deals where people can commit to some sort of athletic endeavor. You sort of have a miles goal. You can swim or bike or hike or run or whatever you're into, and then you ask people to pledge a sort of per mile donation for, and all that money goes to the ACA's Send a Child to Camp Fund. The reason, and I think it's relevant for today, because I am an advocate of, I think part of this deal with growing camp or getting more kids, we have to reach communities that can't afford us. If you look at the numbers, the average American family cannot afford the average American camp. Mm-hmm. And so part of this deal with reaching more kids is financial aid, and I would encourage camp professionals to, as it makes sense for them. And I'm in the interesting position of my own camp has its own scholarship fund that I'm not raising money for. I'm raising money for the ACA scholarship fund, and I get that there's an awkwardness there, but I think every camp can sort of take a look at what they're doing, and you can go to acacamps.org/campmovesme. Or if you just want to sign up, you can go to athlete.com/ACA, and both get money towards sending kids to camp, but also just as important, because there's a social media aspect of this, gaining visibility for the cause. Yeah. And I am doing it myself, but I encourage people to get out there and make a commitment to an athletic endeavor sometime in the month of October is when it is happening. So have a look.
That's awesome. I also am going to do it in the month of October for Camp Moves Me too. So if anybody wants to do that, I was trying to figure out a way if we could indicate to the ACA that it was, camp pros, people that identify themselves as camp pros from the group, or you people who listen to CampHacker do it. That's not set up for that this year, but hopefully will be in the future. But I just want to encourage people to get the word out there. We are one of the media partners for that. And so it's our pleasure to be able to host this. That wasn't why Paul said it. Paul said that on his own before knowing that we were a media partner for it. But we're really grateful that he's doing it. One of our co-hosts. I'll be doing it too, and we encourage other people to check it out as well.
And if camp pros are doing it, and they really identify as camp pros, maybe found out about it through the Camp Pros Facebook group or through this podcast, if you want to send Tom Holland of ACA an email, I'm sure he would appreciate knowing that. He is the relatively new development director at ACA. This is his baby. He is an amazing guy. I'm really excited that ACA has hired him, and I know he wants to know how the word is getting out. Yep. So feel free to identify yourself that way.
Nice. That's awesome. Thanks, Paul. So, Joe?
My tool of the week is Pocket. Pocket is an app that is both on Apple and Android, but it's also a web-based service. I used to use Instapaper, which is a way to save articles to read later, and Pocket has since been my replacement since I moved from Apple to Android in January. What I love about this is that I use Feedly, which is another app for all of my RSS feeds, and I used to save them to Feedly, but then I found I never went back and actually looked at them again. And now I've switched my saving thing to be Pocket, and so I can literally just pull up an article or any web page that has been saved, and I can read through it. On Apple, you have to read. On Android, I know, Travis, you had another app that reads for you, but on Android, the Pocket app reads the article to you if you want it to do that as well. It's great. Like, I'm looking at my front page of Pocket on my browser right now, and I have Irresistible Pumpkin Pie Cupcakes to Gawker, listening to radio was cool again, 8 smart radio stations, to Google Ventures 6-step design process, how we revamped our entire product, to a DIY Cube, the best long game ever, right? So it's a very varied, for me, it's just a very varied thing that I can go to when I'm looking for something to read in a short period of time, or to have read to me as I'm traveling in a car.
Nice. That's awesome.
And it's a free service. I think there's a premium service. I have no idea what the premium service would do for me. Like, you can also tag your articles and whatnot to find them again. So it's got a bit of that Evernote feel, but this just works better for me because it's somewhere that's not clogging up my Evernote.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe. Gab, you got a really interesting tool this week.
Yeah, I actually got this off of one of your tweets that you posted this week about, I think it was like the top 5 things on how to do social media better. And one of the links led me to here, which I think I'll try to pronounce it properly. Twiriad?
Yep, Twiriad.
Twiriad. I'm sorry, it just sounds like period, and with a W. Yeah, and I'm just like, I can't say it properly, but there we go. Okay, so basically, all you have to do is put your Twitter account into Twiriad, and it will tell you when are the best times for you to post tweets. And for me, this is something that I've said very often. I'm still a little bit. I've been really trying with Twitter. I like it. I like how quick it is, and I think there's a lot of great shares that can happen. But I'm still a little bit baffled on when's a good time. And it just gave me basically proper, the times that I have most of my followers are online, that they'll possibly see my tweets. And I think for any business, that's just very, very useful. It took 2 minutes, and it breaks it down like Sunday, Saturday, and the weekdays, and depending on how many followers you have, I think it can get a little bit more specific. But I thought it was a really cool little free tool.
Yep, it's awesome. Yeah. We've used it for CampHacker for sure. We changed the way we set up our scheduled tweets based on what Twitter had said. So
yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah, right on. Cool. Well, I wanted to do one other little information piece before we go, and that is that invite you all to check out www.thinkcamp.ca, which is a personal project of Joe's that we want to do everything we can to help, because ThinkCamp is a big part of how Joe and Gab and I know each other. Certainly how we became friends, because we were all on a conference committee together for the previous incarnation called the Ontario Camp Leadership Workshop. And as a committee, we radically changed how the conference was organized, and we let it lapse a little bit. And Joe's been kind enough to revamp it. And it really is an intense 2-day conference that's running this year from November 11th to 13th. And the cool thing about it as a camp conference is it is very conversational. It's based on the needs of the people that go there. It's not, you don't know ahead of time what the presentations are going to go. People are going to put up the things that they want to talk about, and sort of facilitate that discussion. So if you have some big questions that you want answered, or you want to present on something radical that you're trying, you can do that there. And I think it'd be an awesome fit for certainly our listeners, and for the people in the Camp Pros group. It's such a natural fit, people that are constantly wanting to learn and are driven to figure out new things and to exchange ideas. It's such an awesome idea. And it's the double bonus is that it's going to be at Pierce Williams Christian Center, halfway between Detroit and Toronto. And you get a chance to actually see the property that you've been hearing about for such a long time. And we're really looking forward to being there and being a part of that. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
I just really want to add that it's a break-even conference. Pierce Williams we don't want to make any money off it. We just don't want to lose any money. So $150 gets you the time. You can register online. CampHacker is a big part of this. Camp Brain is offering us free registration, and Rail Design, which is Gab, has done up the logo, which I promptly put in the background of the website and have to change. But I think the ease of access, I fly out of Detroit all the time to go to, I went to New York the other week, and I'm off to the ACA National in February out of Detroit as well. So it's about an hour and a half drive from Detroit, and maybe 2 hours from Toronto. So it's accessible and it's close if you're flying in as well.
Right on. Well, thanks for doing that, Joe. So people want to go check out thinkcamp.ca. And it's $150 Canadian. So with the exchange rate, that would be about $125, I think, right now, for U.S. Americans. And it's a great deal. It's an awesome, good conversation. So I want to thank you all for joining us and listening to the show. It was a pretty long one for us, but a very important conversation, I feel. I want to just make sure that you check out some of the smart stuff that Dan says. If you follow him on Twitter at Dan Loves Camp, you'll get to see, as I say, smart things that he's talking about summer camp and the future of that. And Dan works at Frost Valley Y, which is at frostvalley.org, and you can check out some of their many camps that they're running to fit their needs there. So do check out what Dan's doing. Paul, where can people follow you online?
They can find all of my social media stuff at paulsheridan.com, and they can find out about Four Winds at fourwindscamp.org.
Awesome. Thanks for being on again, Paul.
No problem. It was fun.
Yeah, look forward to the next one of these with you. Joe, how about you? Where can people follow you?
People can follow me at yoyojoe.com. That has all my links to Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to find out more about Pierce Williams and what we do, you can find us at campisbetter.com.
Great. Thanks for being on, Joe.
Yeah.
And Gab?
You can follow me on Twitter at Gabrielle Rail. Rail has 2 L's. And you can check out where I work at ouareau.com.
Fantastic. It was great to have everybody on. Thank you. And thanks for being a listener. If you're watching this on YouTube, you get to see some of our funny faces that we make when funny tech things happen. Do check us out there. And if you're watching there, please subscribe to get the videos when we update them. We're going back into a regular production schedule every 2 weeks for the rest of the winter. So the next 9 months will be every 2 weeks. So subscribe so you get first notification when our new videos come out. If you're listening on iTunes, then or you're listening on the website, I hope you subscribe on iTunes. You can see the link right in the the show notes, which again are at camphacker.tv/podcast. And if you've been a longtime fan or you've heard something today that you thought was great and would be willing to share the show to get more of the Camp Pros community listening, if you go to camphacker.tv/love, that'll put out something on your Twitter for us that talks about how much you like the show. You can edit it if you want, but there's something ready to go. It's simple to two-button click to go and put out a tweet about the show so others can find it and learn about it too. So again, that's camphacker.tv/love. Thanks very much for watching, everybody, and thanks for the evening, friends.